my fellow Americans. I am not a crook, and you are listening to Free Zone Radio.
What begins as, "I'm not a crook," ends as a masterclass in persuasion, power, and public image. For Free Zone Radio, I'm Jason Crockett, and this is Second Stage. When Frost Nixon premiered in 2006, it arrived with the energy of a historical drama and a media event. It's written by British playwright and screenwriter Peter Morgan, and the play dramatizes the now famous 1977 TV interviews between David Frost and Richard Nixon. A moment when a disgraced former president, fresh off the shadow of his Watergate scandal, sat down not in a courtroom but under TV studio lights to attempt something like a public reckoning. Morgan is better known for his fascination with real-world power and the people who wield it. I didn't know him before Frost Nixon, but it turns out, I know his body of work. Movies like The Queen, starring Helen Mirren, and Netflix's TV series The Crown. Through those, he has built a career dramatizing the private tensions behind public figures. His style blends meticulous research with a kind of theatrical immediacy, and it's a hybrid of journalism and drama where exposition becomes part of the performance. Frost Nixon fits squarely within that style. It treats a real historical event as a contest. It's part interview, part boxing match, part psychological duel. Structurally, the play builds like a series of rounds, with each interview tightening the pressure until the final confrontation over Watergate lands with the force of a confession that history never quite secured in the courtroom. In that sense, the play occupies a fascinating space in modern theater. It's a documentary drama with the pacing of a thriller, and it reflects a late 20th and early 21st century fascination with media as the arena where truth is contested and sometimes forced into the open. What makes the play historically significant is not just that it revisits Nixon, but that it reframes accountability itself. If the courts never fully resolved Nixon's culpability, then Morgan suggests that television, performance, spectacle, narrative might become the place where judgment happens. The result is a play that feels as much about the power of media as it is about the man at its center. Well, to really dig into that intersection of history, media, and performance, we decided to do another crossover event, joining up with our friend Drew Haston of A Deadman's Books. Drew is my co-teacher, and he's a journalist. And it turns out he knows somebody with a better insight on the play and the man behind it. Dr. Russ Witcher of Tennessee Tech University is also a journalist, and he was Drew's mentor. And he's something of a Nixon expert himself. And it turns out he saw the play when it premiered. At the end of the episode, Drew and I will circle back to reflect on what Frost Nixon reveals about Nixon, about media, and about the strange way history decides when a story is finally finished.
Welcome back, everyone. We have read a play about Richard Nixon, which means we bring in our in-house Richard Nixon expert, Dr. Russ Witcher. This is your third time.
All right, is that a record?
Well, I have plaques I'm supposed to give out for every third time. Remember, when you get to 5, you get like the little sport coat.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so you have to hold me to that, by the way. We read the play Frost Nixon by Peter Morgan, who, Crockett, you, I guess, unveiled to me that he has written so many other great things.
So I didn't know his name at all at first, but then I remember that there was a movie version of it with Frank Langella and Martin Sheen, or not Martin Sheen, Michael Sheen, and plenty of other big name actors at the time too. And so I thought, oh, okay. And then when you watch the trailer for that, it says that Peter Morgan also had done the movie The Queen with Helen Mirren, which is based off a play called The Audience, which was also the impetus for Netflix's series The Crown that he had also done. And I thought, my dude, you've done all of these things that I love. I didn't know that you were Frost Nixon as well.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. And you said you saw it on Broadway. Is that correct?
I did. Yeah, it was on Broadway, and it had Langella in it, and also Shannon, is that his name?
Sheen, yeah. Michael Sheen, yeah.
Okay. It didn't have I was trying to think of his name.
Kevin Bacon.
Yeah, it didn't have Kevin Bacon
Right.
in it, but he's in the movie.
Yeah.
Of course, it did have Brennan, I guess you'd call him his chief of staff after he left the White House.
Yeah.
And he just died recently, Brennan did. So
This is something that you have spent, I guess, a lot of your life researching is Richard Nixon. And these interviews. I know the last time we talked, I told you about how for my students, we went to a conference, they used these interviews for examples as like gotcha questions and interview process, which for me was interesting after going back and reading the play. Because those that were surrounding Frost were so upset with him, the way that he interviewed him. They were like, "What are you doing? You're not even conducting an interview." I guess I got a two-part. That kind of led me to another question. But first off, what was it like to see this reenacted as a play, something that you have, like I said, spent so much of your life studying? But then also, do you think that this is a good example for our students of the interview process?
Well, yeah, I thought they did a good job. I mean, it eventually became a tough interview. But at first it wasn't. And Nixon kind of thrived on that anyway. He didn't like softball questions. He liked to be challenged, and he certainly was.
What does he say when he calls him drunk?
Oh, right.
What does he say to him? He's like, no holds barred.
No holds barred. That's right.
Want a pizza? Yeah, I don't think that's a real scene.
Right.
I didn't realize, though, that pre-election that Nixon's approval rating was so high. It seemed, when I was reading the play, it seemed like everything was going great, and then for some reason he does the Watergate stuff. I mean, what was his thinking behind that?
I believe that he wasn't concerned about Watergate. He was concerned about something that the plumbers had done earlier, and that was to break into Daniel Ellsberg's psychiatrist's office to see what all he knew about. Well, he was the one who released the Pentagon Papers.
Yeah.
And so he thought, well, if he's got this much information, because he helped write the papers even, maybe he's got some other things that he's confided to his therapist that we need to know about. Ironically, is after they broke in, and I've seen the filing cabinet. It's in the Smithsonian, where
cool.
they took a crowbar and opened it. Ironically, they found nothing that would help them in trying to undermine Ellsberg.
Didn't Forrest Gump? Isn't he the person?
Yes,
that
supposedly.
At the Watergate break-in, yeah. That guy was everywhere.
One thing that I talked to you about a lot, and I told Crockett I can't wait to ask you this question, but Gerald Ford pardoned Nixon, and because he was about to go on trial, and then he had the heart attack or whatever, and so Gerald Ford's kind of like, okay, we're just going to pardon you fully. And people were upset that he didn't go to trial, and it kind of made me think about how when we went through after Trump's first term, how he was kind of like, I can pardon myself, it's okay, and everybody was kind of like, whoa, who's going to hold the justice and things like that. And I know I've talked to you about how I feel like that this political climate and maybe presidency is similar to Nixon's in a way, and you've always said that Trump doesn't have a war. But here we are.
He's got one now, yeah.
So.
And then don't forget Biden pardoned his son.
That's right. Yeah. I don't know. I've talked to my wife about this play, and I know I told you that we were going to watch it hopefully this weekend. But I read In the Garden of Beasts by Eric Larson. It talks about Hitler's rise.
Yeah, I read that.
Yeah, and there's a few things when you read it, you kind of raise your eyebrows at. You're like, ooh, that sounds eerily similar. But I think that the more that I get into this time period, I feel like that we're kind of in the same situation. Do you feel that way?
Yeah. I mean, it's even more contentious, I think.
Yeah.
Which I didn't think that was possible. Because I remember Watergate. I was in high school, and so actually it was kind of what led me to be a journalist. I thought, wow, who wants to be president when you can be a journalist? And get a president out of office.
Yeah.
That was a comment that I had written down here from the third scene, that they're talking to David Frost about the interview, and they're insisting that we cannot just lowball him these questions. We cannot just give this, like, you can't just sit there and let him shine. They were expecting that this was going to be the trial that Nixon never got.
Right.
And they did not want this to exonerate him. We want him on camera.
Nixon considered it that way too. He said, I consider this to be my testimony.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they got so close, and then Brennan breaks it up.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess this is kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but I didn't know if you thought that Nixon wanted to apologize, because that's what they were trying to get, right? Was like an outright apology.
Well, Nixon was never going to say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, just wasn't in him to say that. But he did say toward the end that I let the American people down, and I'll have to live with that for the rest of my life. And so that's pretty close.
Yeah.
Have you watched any of the original interviews?
I watched the part because I feel like I had the same reaction that David Frost had when Nixon says, if the president does it, it's not illegal. Because he's kind of like, I'm sorry. And so I went back and watched that. I have plans to watch the movie and the full interview. I haven't had time to sit down. I want to watch it in total.
It was 4 different ones, I think, or maybe even 5.
And they have the interviews on YouTube, so it's a lengthy batch to watch. And I was watching again last night. The first few minutes of the first interview, man, Nixon really takes the microphone, and he will not give it up. And it's exactly what they present in the play, that he's charming, he's captivating, and he's long-winded.
Yeah.
But then when you see the glimpse of him saying, as close to an apology as he's going to get, like, he's got tears in his eyes.
Yeah.
And he seems like, okay, this is the real human being here. And man, I felt bad while watching it.
I don't know. We've talked about when he went to that football game.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then reading this about him, I don't know. I know that he did a bad thing, but I don't come away with him as like an evil person.
No.
Right.
What do you think?
The same thing.
Yeah.
Especially, like, I've said it before and before. You're watching him give an interview, and he's eloquent, he's intelligent, and he genuinely seems to care. He has an authentic vision for what he's talking about. He knows what he's talking about, and he just seems genuine. And we're looking at him as the monster of the 70s. This is as bad. Like, our characters in the play, this is as bad as you think it's ever going to get.
Yeah.
Buckle in.
Yeah.
Well, how do you feel about Nixon as a man?
Well, I mean, he's a compelling figure to me. I've studied him for a decade and was never bored.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, I can't really think of, I think I may have mentioned that he kind of reminds me of Teddy Roosevelt, and that they were both indestructible. So Nixon's been described as a cork, that if you push him down, he's going to pop back up. He's not going to stay there.
He just seems, I don't know, he just seems decent. Maybe I'm misreading it, but just kind of someone who maybe got paranoid, or maybe just took it a little too far and made a mistake. And
he always said that it was because he exposed Alger Hiss back in the 1950s for being a communist. I mean, Alger Hiss was involved in work on the United Nations, establishing it. He's a Harvard graduate. He was kind of the left's golden boy. And he said, when I proved that he was involved in the communist movement in America, liberals never forgave me, never, because you cognitive dissonance. You don't tell somebody that their hero, in his case, maybe not as a crook, but as a traitor.
Yeah. I know that I've asked you this before, but I just think it's interesting to think about, because Nixon kind of talks about it in his interviews, that if it wasn't for the camera, he would have been president instead of Kennedy. Because he's like, I have a problem perspiring.
And he had been in the hospital too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he had banged his shin on the car door. and he had an infection. And he actually had to be hospitalized, so he lost a lot of weight.
That's insane to me. Like every time I think about Nixon now, though, that's kind of what I think about. Is maybe he's a little clumsy. He's almost like this oh gosh guy, you know. And when he goes to the football game, he even talks about, I was the backup. I didn't get to play any in college football. I was basically just stood by the by the coach. So
you remember Ben Stein?
Yes.
Ben Stein's dad was an economist for Nixon.
Oh, okay.
And he said, the thing about Nixon is that he represents all the losers, like me. Everybody, nobody can identify with John Kennedy, but every person can identify with Nixon.
Yeah. What do you think? I don't know if you've ever thought about this with how much you've studied him. That if he was president instead of Kennedy, I mean, what do you think the trajectory would have looked like differently? I think you said we probably wouldn't have gone to Vietnam.
I don't believe we would.
Yeah. What else do you think it would look like? I mean, with the space, I say that the space program, but he kind of started the space shuttle program. Nixon did. It started under him, which I think is interesting because we just went to the Space Center Tuesday.
Oh yeah,
and there was the space shuttle. They've got like a model of I can't remember which one it was, but anyways, I was trying to explain to my kids because we've kind of gone back to shooting off rockets.
Yeah,
and so for them it's rockets, and I was like, this was what my childhood was the space shuttle. But anyways, I don't know. I mean, do you think what do you think would look different about that time period if Nixon was president over Kennedy?
Nixon, even when he was elected president, he was really not a true conservative. He called for a guaranteed income for everybody. He was actually wanting what people would now call socialized medicine, because Nixon lost two brothers. I think one of them had TB, and
that's right.
I don't know what the other one died of, but anyway, he knew what it was like to be poor and not be able to afford adequate health care. So he genuinely cared for the have-nots because, in his debate with Kennedy, the best line that he had was, "I know what it's like to be poor," meaning you don't know what it's like to be poor.
Right, yeah. I had just a couple things. We were talking about like the similarities between, Ford pardons Nixon. I've got Casa Pacifica. Is that Mar-a-Lago? And then
not quite that grand. It's just a home.
But I mean, I feel like it's like a similar feel. You've got the president who's went to this beach getaway, and
it's still privately owned.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah,
that's cool.
I thought it might be a museum of some kind, but it didn't.
I've got the quote from Brennan too, where he says, I love this quote. He says, "You know as well as I do that 60% of what Nixon did in office was right, and 30% might have ended up wrong, but he thought it was right at the time."
Yeah, I love Brennan. Brennan was with Nixon right after Watergate, and he said, this guy is, he's physically and mentally collapsed. And so he saw it as his job to bring him back. And he said that one thing that Nixon was still interested in was playing golf. He said, we played golf every day for over a year because that was something that could stimulate him,
So in Frost Nixon, like, it seems that both of your main characters, David Frost and Nixon, like, this is their chance to make it back into fame, into their greatness, because Frost needs to get his New York show back and his table, right? And Nixon in the play voices, maybe I'll be able to talk to foreign leaders, maybe I'll be able to. Would there ever have really been a chance for President Nixon to return east and be involved in Washington after having resigned, after Watergate, after an interview with David Frost? Would that have been a real possibility?
Well, I mean, he did eventually get to do that. He had to spend some time in the wilderness, as he said. But yeah, I mean, he kind of tried to use that as a springboard to his rehabilitation. I mean, that was kind of his first big move, because those interviews were broadcast in 1977. Right. And so it's about 2 or 3 years after Watergate. And so it's, he didn't want to be forgotten. Yeah. And I think that was key to the beginning of his return.
I know that you've talked about how you have studied how Nixon uses the media to rehabilitate his image. Yeah. And I feel like that this was like the first attempt at that. Do you think that these interviews, because of the way that they ended, do you think that they kind of damaged him more than he was hoping that it would restore him?
I don't believe he thought that he lost the debate.
Okay.
I mean, he admitted that he lost to Kennedy, but he never admitted that he lost the debate to Frost. So, you know, maybe the American people just wanted to talk about Watergate, and maybe it was a little bit early because, you know, Nixon wanted to talk about China. You know, I don't want to talk about that topic. Yeah. But there was really no way to avoid it. And when I was watching it, even as a person in high school, I kept wondering, why are they talking about Vietnam so much? Why aren't they talking about Watergate? Mm-hmm. And then I realized that, well, if it wasn't for Vietnam, there wouldn't have been a Watergate, because that led to all the plumbers and, you know, paranoia and what does Daniel Ellsberg have and what's he going to leak, and breaking into the Democrat headquarters and breaking into his psychiatrist's office, all kinds of criminality that really did nothing except doom Nixon.
Mm-hmm. But, I mean, my wife brought this up too. Like, you look at Nixon's legacy now seems to be haunted by so much of corruption scandal that everything gets a gate on it whenever you're talking about a scandal, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, there are plenty of things that he achieved as well that serve to a good legacy. What's the saying? Only Nixon could go to China, right?
That's right. That's right.
What do you think are other like really great legacy things that he's left behind?
Well, I mean, I would say that ending the Vietnam War, I mean, people were saying that it took too long, but maybe it took 5 years to do it, because, I mean, we mentioned earlier, you saw what happened in Afghanistan. Yeah. You can't pull out that quickly. Right. And de Gaulle told him that. He said, you know, Algiers, my problem was Algiers, and I considered that to be a part of France. Obviously, it wasn't, because they broke away, but you know, you got to pull out slowly is what you got to do. And so I think probably maybe he didn't do a good job of explaining why it had to be slow. But you know, we saw that once we were out, it did collapse.
Yeah, that's right.
You were talking about his legacy and things like that. It does remind me of how they were so torn on what question are we going to lead off with. Yeah. Are we going to lead off with, are we going to ask him, why didn't you burn the tapes? Or we're going to like ease him into it. And they chose to just right off the bat talk about the tapes. And he immediately goes, well, that's what Lyndon Johnson did. And they were just kind of like, oh, no.
Yeah, they all had their systems. The only thing is Nixon just didn't have an off button because he was so clumsy. Haldeman says, there's no way that he can do an on-off thing. So it was voice activated. So everything was recorded. Of course, you know, Johnson would say, oh, well, let's talk about this, and click, you know, off the record.
I just thought it was funny because they were trying to avoid Nixon basically touting himself about, well, I did this and I did that, and avoiding things, and it was just right off the bat. He was like, well, Lyndon Johnson did this, and you know, I actually did these things, and we achieved all of this, and they immediately were like, oh, this is a disaster.
Yeah.
I just thought that was funny.
That's another thing that I really loved about this script, though, is when they're thinking about like questions or how Peter Morgan uses questions in the interview process, because he's finally getting to sit down with Nixon for the first taping, and Frost had been out partying the night before, you know, as he was known to do. And the guy's counting down 5, 4, and Nixon looks at him and says, did you do any fornicating? And when I read that, I thought, what kind of weird question is that to ask? But then in my head, I can just see Nixon grinning because they're like, 2, 1, and now you have to record. And I thought, you evil man, you threw him off his game. I love it. I love that.
Do you know, like, if some of the things like that, is that accurate? Or?
It wasn't that close to taping, but he did say, you know, did you do any fornicating this weekend?
Even when he calls him in that drunk scene, which is probably one of my favorite scenes in the play, he's like, have you got somebody over there right now? No. I just thought that was really interesting. So the Manolo Sanchez, when I read about him, I was like, I know Dr. Witcher will be able to answer this for me. They keep calling him his manservant. And I just thought that was an odd way to describe him. Yeah. And I don't know. I didn't know if you had like a backstory to Manolo Sanchez or anything. And is it weird that I was getting like a homoerotic feel? Do you know what I mean? It was like, I was kind of like, this is an odd thing to have. But.
It's a bad term. They should have called him his valet.
Okay.
You know, his wife was worked for Nixon too. Her name was Fina.
Okay.
And they had escaped Castro's Cuba. And after the Nixon presidency, they moved to Spain. I've been to Cuba a couple of times. That seems pretty common for people to leave Cuba and go to Spain. And that's what they did.
Yeah.
But, you know, for a long time, they were in the house and really kind of members of the family.
Yeah.
Having watched The West Wing, which this is not a basis for true history or anything like that, but having watched The West Wing, it seems like presidents typically have a body man who is like your attendant. He'll do a lot. Yeah. So that's kind of how I was reading Manolo Sanchez. I just figured he was the president's body man.
Well, I thought that too, but then they kept calling him manservant. And I was that's weird. Why are they calling him manservant?
I don't think Nixon ever called him that.
Yeah, I thought that was so strange.
I love some of the characterizations of Nixon in here when Frost finally arrives and they're talking over the deal and the $200,000 is about to be paid. Oh, yeah. Well, they walk into the room and Nixon's first comment is, "Oh, I wouldn't want to be a Russian leader. They never know when they're being paid." And there was an awkward pause and I thought, does he not get like how like you of all people should not be saying that? But then right afterward, he is saying goodbye to Caroline Cushing and he says, "Oh, you got to go to London?" And she says, "No, I'm going to Monte Carlo. Got to go back." And he tells Frost, "You know, you should marry her. In Monaco, they pay no taxes." And I thought, what is it with this Nixon? Does he not get, like, is there a duplicitous side to him? Or, and then right afterward, as Frost is leaving too, I really loved that scene where Nixon and Brennan are watching from the shadows and they're talking about him. And I thought, oh, you know everything you're doing right now. I just kept liking that depiction of him.
It reminds me of that scene. What does he say in the car where he's like makes the joke and Brennan kind of looks at him?
Oh, where he wants to kind of do Watergate again?
Yeah. And he's like, "I'm joking." He's like, "I'm joking, obviously."
We've got some people over there. We can send them in on that.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. I do like that it shows a humanity to the character, because if I ever get to use a script like this in the class, like we can talk about the historical person, but it's not just a cheap facsimile. It's not just a stereotype or a caricature, I should say.
Yeah.
It's like you get to see a real human being who can joke with people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that's overlooked is Nixon's sense of humor.
Yeah.
He was very dry.
Yeah. Well, I just the two things now that I've read in a row. Like I keep saying this, but you know, the Hogs Horns of Nixon coming and then this have really made me, I guess, second guess my perception of Nixon, because, you know, as someone who didn't grow up, I guess, really even near that time period, all I've ever known of is Nixon is Watergate, scandal. This was maybe the worst president because he had to resign. He's the only one. That's all I've ever heard. But then you go back and you look at these things and talking to you kind of realize, like, I mean, he had a really good first term, and he was just, like I said, just a normal guy, and probably took it just a little too far and made some mistakes that I think, and, you know, we keep going back to this, but we all can connect with that. I'm sure we've all made mistakes that we wish we could go back and do, and maybe they were big ones, and Nixon's just happened to be a really big one.
Yeah. I do think he's very relatable in that way, you know. And even going back, he was a loyal vice president to Eisenhower,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
The guy who won World War II, you know. And when Eisenhower had his stroke, you know, Nixon was acting president for a period of time while he recovered.
Crockett talked about teaching this with our kids, and that's something that I have actually thought about doing this semester, because we've wrapped up our yearbook and we've kind of got a lot of free time right now, and I've thought about us reading this in class, and a couple of my students were receptive to it, and a couple were like, "Are you really going to make us read something?" But I didn't know, kind of, have you ever thought about teaching this at the university level, I guess the play in a journalistic classroom, and how would you go about that?
Well, we did, when I taught mass communication, we did look at Oliver Stone's Nixon.
Oh, yeah.
And which I thought was, I mean, the Republicans hated it and the Democrats hated it, but I thought it was fair, you know? I mean, the Republicans thought it was too cruel and the Democrats not cruel enough, but he went just down the line with Nixon, which was surprising because Oliver Stone hated him, But Oliver Stone, he rose to the occasion. He kind of did that with the movie W too.
Oh yeah,
I thought it was a very sympathetic portrayal of Bush at a time when Bush was not very popular.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is someone you've compared Nixon to with talking to me sometimes is George Bush.
The media was really after George Bush too. I mean, I remember saying at the time that this is as bad as when Nixon was president in terms of just negative treatment by the press. That's not true anymore. Now the press loves him because he hates Trump too.
Have you seen either of those? Mm-hmm. I've not seen.
Oh yeah. I remember when the movie W came out because I had brought it up at summer department meeting, and I was like, oh wow. And you really do develop like a perspective that he's driven by, I need to show my dad that I can actually do this. I need to actually have a name. Like there's a lot of empathy for W the character when you watch that one. Yeah.
Is that one reason you've been so fascinated with Nixon is just because of how human, I guess, he is on the other side of all the scandal and all of that?
Yeah, and I mean, it was part of my life. My dad was a delegate to the Nixon conventions in 60, 68, and 72, and he was a delegate in 64 for Goldwater. Goldwater was his hero. So, Nixon was a part of my childhood just through my dad being a delegate and a supporter of his.
Yeah. When you did your research, did any of your perceptions on Nixon change as opposed to when you were growing up?
Well, I felt like that there was a defense that could be made for Nixon, and I never thought that.
Right. Yeah.
I just thought that he's damned forever. But I don't think so, and I think Nixon knew that too. Nixon was a big lover of history too. Even ancient history. And he had the ability to take the long view. He knew that Nixon would be disparaged for a long time.
Yeah.
But maybe not 100 years from now.
Yeah. Well, it's something that he'll never be able to shake. Yeah. I mean, you currently, I'm sure in the future we may have another president that resigns, but currently you're the only one who's resigned because of scandal. And that I feel like that was something that they had talked about in the play was they were kind of like, let's play that impeachment. Let's see what happens if we get impeached because you may not get kicked out of office. Yeah. Maybe that's like another side of Nixon that shows, I guess, more of that decency is he was kind of like, I'm going to resign. But I don't know if that was him maybe reading the writing on the wall.
He didn't challenge the Kennedy election either. And there were lots of instances where it looked kind of fishy. Yeah. Especially in Texas when LBJ's counting the ballots.
Oh, yeah. Right. The character Nixon in this play brings that exact same thing up because he says during his interview that Dr. Kissinger said, Mr. President, I want you to know it's a crime. You're leaving office, and history is going to record that you were a great president. And I said, Henry, that depends on who's writing the history.
That's right.
And he does have a vision for that.
Yeah. That also reminds me, too, of just how he knew what he was doing in these interviews because he starts to talk about his two dead brothers, and then he starts to say, I mean, I'm not really a crier, but the only time that I cried is when my daughter came in and was like, Daddy, I want you to stay and all these things. And I was thinking, man, he's a genius.
If I were going to teach this, I love the way Morgan has structured it so that it's like people say it's like a duel. It feels like a boxing match between the two of them. And Nixon comes out as the champ who is just clobbering him in round one. Because at the end of that interview, they come out and they say their 2 hours is up. And Nixon smiles. He smiles and says, pity, I was just beginning to enjoy that. He's like a dragon. He's just eating him alive.
Well, also, too, I think Frost underestimated Nixon a little bit because if I remember correctly, he kind of talks about, like, I didn't think that he was that intelligent. I didn't think that I would. He thought that if I dumped this question about burning the tapes on him, then that would just throw him off. And Nixon was almost anticipating that.
Yeah. Well, I read a lot about presidential historians. And even people who hate Nixon, they say he's the smartest president we've had since John Adams. That's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, he was on top of those interviews.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else?
Their fear in the play is that, like we had said, he's going to use this as a chance to exonerate himself, and you're letting him get away with it. You won't interrupt him. You got to get in there. You got to hit him with this. Reston says that right now, for a liberal American, it's agony. It's like watching a dead man come come back to life. He's getting more and more confident. You can hear it in his voice. And the way he's described, Nixon in the studio is energized. There's no shadows under his eyes. He's tanned. He's confident. He looks 10 years younger. And I wrote in my book, I was like, oh, he's like a political vampire, that this is like, he's getting stronger and you are losing right now. It's a really cool characterization to see this. Like, you can look at him from the angle of myth. You can look at him from the angle of how he's the experience. He's the pro. He's the champ. There's a lot you could do with this.
Yeah.
I like Reston. You know, his dad was a columnist for the New York Times. And Reston I knew a lot of those people in the late 60s, early 70s, just hated Nixon. I mean, you see it with Trump, too. But I had never noticed that before. I mean, when I was growing up, you were to honor the president, you know, which maybe is unfair because, you know, why would you honor the president? But it was just shocking that there would be that treatment from the press. And he got it even when he was vice president and when he was running against Kennedy. The press just did not care for him.
Why do you think that is? Because he's clumsy, like we talked about? Or
I don't know if he said it in this interview or not, but he later said, I was talking to Johnson, and Johnson said, you know, why does the press hate me? You know, I do this for them, I do that for them. And it was somebody from the past, who was, I think, the Secretary of State for Truman. He said, Mr. President, you're not a likable man. and Nixon said, you know, Johnson was not referring to me, but I think it does refer to me. I'm not a likable man.
Which I think is strange because, like I said, the more that I study about him, I start to like Nixon more. And is it weird that I feel guilty about that? Is that weird?
I think part of it is just because of the reputation, right? The notoriety.
Yeah.
But if I'm looking at what I've read about these presidents, I can see, okay, they like Kennedy because he was young, he was good looking, he was charming. Okay. But really, is he better than?
Yeah.
And then Did Johnson have some resentment toward Kennedy?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I wanted to make sure I was right about that.
That was the one thing they agreed on, Johnson and Kennedy, Nixon.
But here's Johnson also, who's an intimidating figure, and he's always like lording over people. And you can see why, okay, we don't like Johnson swinging around and all of that. And then there's Nixon. And why don't we like him? But really, why don't we like him?
Yeah.
Because he's right about some of these things. Yeah. Okay, he's not right about covering up info, but he's right about a lot of these things.
You're going to get a hat that says Nixon was right about everything.
Oh, no. I found out as a teenager that my grandpa was a huge Nixon fan in the 70s. And I remember looking at my grandpa why? Really? But what do I at 16 know about anything, right? And it's you weren't even alive, Jason. What do you know about anything? And now here I am at 46, and it's I probably would have voted for him too. I probably would have too.
Yeah, when I did all my research, you know, it's like, well, what are you writing about now, Nixon? Still? It's like, and I mean, I have to say to my friends, I'm not crazy. You know, I'm not crazy. Yeah. You know I'm not crazy.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Because like I said, I mean, for me growing up, that was all that I associated with him, especially as, like Crockett was saying, when I was becoming a teenager, that's really when you kind of start to become aware of the political world, and you're kind of on that verge of forming your own path. Because I can remember when I was a freshman, it was the 2004 election, and I was for Bush just because that's what my parents were, they were going to vote for. But then I got to vote in the next election, and I voted for Obama. And you're kind of in that stretch where you're learning about all these different political realms and things like that, and I just always assumed that he was just a bad guy, just a scandalous person, and it's just kind of been really interesting to see the human in that. Yeah. And I don't know, do you think that that's maybe something that we desire now, is to see like a more humanity for the president?
Yeah, it's totally different now.
Yeah.
I remember when Nixon died, there was a TV critic who wrote for the New York Times who was liberal, hated Nixon, but in his, I guess, obituary of Nixon, he said, "Thank you, President Nixon, for all the great television. You know, your checker speech, you know, your debates with Kennedy, and later on with Frost, the 'I'm not a crook' speech, you know, I think his farewell address was great at the White House. You know, we always remember, don't when others hate you, you don't hate them. When you do, you destroy yourself.
Yeah. I saw that line in this play, and I thought, I'm going to have to put that in my back pocket, because we were just talking to Aaron Hoover about students confiding in us and things like that. And I know that that's things that I've had to tell them, and now I can be like, Richard Nixon once said.
Yeah, I quote him still.
Well, that was one of my last notes on here, was that it was tough to tell where the politics stopped and the showbiz started, and that maybe that's the point in the end, maybe especially in modern politics and TV and entertainment, that there is such a blurred line that I think I always used to agree you probably had to have some sort of fame in order to get elected president. But now it almost seems like you need to be a celebrity, or you need to have some sort of status or some sort of public image before you can even get in the door to be electable nowadays. And here Nixon gave us such great TV. The V as he's getting on the helicopter. And everything.
Yeah, he got that from Eisenhower. Right. But, Nixon met Pat at a community theater. They were both like, what would you call them, community actors, and I don't think he ever lost that that love of acting. He just transferred it to politics,
which is interesting about the debate that he loses to Kennedy, because it was on camera, and you would think that would play into it. Which I know the big thing was he was sweating and all of that. But you would think that acting would have played into his.
But as a guy who stands in front of sophomores, and I could just stand there and teach and not have to do anything, I will still start trickling sweat.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I completely understand President Nixon. I completely understand the image. When kids are like, why do you keep doing that? And it's like, I'm trying to wipe away sweat from my forehead so I don't look like a fool in front of you right now. And I get that.
And the irony was that Kennedy actually was not healthy, but he looked great. He looked great during the debate.
Yeah. Also, too, Nixon said he had to shave twice a day.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, what a manly man.
Yeah. I know. Yeah.
If I shaved this, it would take 2 weeks to come back. I didn't know how you felt like this interview progressed the field of journalism, because, again, I was naive going into this. I didn't realize that Frost was just a talk show host.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that it would essentially be like Jimmy Fallon or someone, or Conan O'Brien, interviewing the president, and especially over something that was such a big scandal.
Yeah.
And with Reston and people like that, like the liberal press, we want the justice that Gerald Ford denied us.
Yeah.
And so I was just kind of interested that David Frost was the guy that kind of took the lead on this.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know kind of what your thoughts were about the field of journalism. Did these interviews shape? Maybe do we still see those in modern journalism today?
Well, I wish we did.
Yeah.
You're not going to get a 10-hour interview from somebody that big.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's people talk about the Lincoln-Douglas debates. The Lincoln-Douglas debates wouldn't be successful because they went on for more than 30 minutes. So everything now is truncated.
Yeah.
But it's not on the grand scale that it used to be.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting too that 60 Minutes, they were trying to get the interviews as well, and then you were telling me in your office before that they did an interview later on with Nixon, correct?
Well, they broadcast it, yeah.
I just thought that was really interesting because you had this rivalry between Frost and who was the guy that was from CBS that was going to do the interviews? I can't think of his name.
Was it Mike Wallace?
Yes. Yeah, and he had Frost on the show, and he was kind of tightening the screws on Frost. Like, well, you think you're up to this? Well, one thing I did want to ask, do you feel like the play gives the interviews a true representation? Like, if I did bring this to my students and they just read it and put it away, do you think that we've got a good representation of the interview process and also the impact that these interviews had and things like that?
Except for the ending. The ending, and this was in the play and the movie, kind of sees Nixon as being relieved. Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't have to worry about Watergate anymore. I've gotten rid of that. I don't have to worry about politics. I just can enjoy life, And that wasn't like Nixon at all. Win or lose, there's no way he could have quit politics.
Yeah.
No way. And so I think that was inaccurate, but up until that point, I thought they did a good job of recreating the events.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting, too, the negotiation process with the contracts.
I had that down here, too. Swifty Lazar,
Yeah.
I knew nothing about him.
He's an entertainment.
But in my head, I was picturing, okay, well, he's probably going to be short, big glasses, probably bald. And by golly, that's how Toby Jones played him in the movie.
That was Swifty, yeah.
So you got to see this on Broadway, and then you got to see these Hollywood actors on stage.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Oh, it was great. It was great. I've seen one other Broadway play, but it's The Lion King, so it doesn't really compare to Frost Nixon. But yeah, I mean, it was. We saw it maybe the second or third week that it had been released, and so I was looking around like, okay, is anybody famous here? In the audience. I didn't see anybody, but they did say that Ron Howard, who directed the movie, had seen the play there.
Okay,
that's cool.
Pick up on it.
So Ron Howard did the movie.
Yeah,
I didn't know
and his
that.
brother, because his family shows up in all of his movies, right?
Yeah.
And his brother Clint Howard is the guy counting down to like 3, 2, 1.
yeah?
Okay.
And his dad's somebody in there too. But
Andy
yeah.
Griffith?
No, not Andy Griffith. Rance Howard. He's somewhere in there too.
What's his brother's name?
Clint Howard.
Clint
He
Howard.
was
That's right.
Gentle Ben.
That's right. Yeah.
He was in that show.
My kids watched Cat in the Hat, the one with Mike Myers, which first off I was like, what
a bit out
what
there.
is this? It's like a flaming heap of garbage. But Clint Howard's in that too, and I was
is
like,
he?
oh yeah, I was like, oh, there's Opie's brother. But he always gets the roles of the ugly guy though, doesn't he? Like in The Grinch, he's the little assistant to the Mayor Mayhew or whatever. So.
What's that? Everybody Loves Raymond. They were interviewing people about its effect, and they interviewed the Howard brothers.
Oh, yeah.
And Clint was saying, all my life, my parents have said, why can't you be more like Ronnie?
Oh, gosh.
Why aren't you more like Ronnie? Why don't And Ron Howard says, well, they probably said that because you were always cutting class.
Was he saying, why are you always like Ronnie or Raji?
Raji.
That's what that's my brother. That's what I've heard all my life. Why can't you be more like Raji?
Yeah, I was surprised by that negotiation too.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the
yeah.
600,000 for Nixon's interview was shocking then, and that Frost was paying the 200,000 out of his own pocket.
Yeah.
Which, okay, you're having to do this and you've got it and you're keeping it covered up because it's like nobody's picking up on this.
Yeah.
But that Nixon also was going to get a cut of the profits from it as well. And at the time, that was shocking. You're giving him like profits from this? Like, we wanted this to be something that was more like a trial. But yeah, that was shocking to me too.
Originally there were going to be 4 shows, and the negotiations led to a 5th. And Nixon people said, "You just gave away a whole episode." But it turns out that 5th episode, Nixon talked about the media.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to talk about me. I want to talk about them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that also because there was an expectation, probably more so than, that the president doesn't need to be like taking money from personal opportunities,
Yeah.
especially, well, he wasn't in office then, but you're still so closely connected. You should not be like profiting from.
Well, they were doing it with the memoirs. Eisenhower made a large chunk of change for writing his memoirs. So, I mean, there was a precedent for presidents and former presidents making a profit from their career.
Yeah.
I just thought it was interesting too, because I was thinking with Frost, like, I was like, I think sometimes we're running it tight. He literally put his entire life on the line to make these interviews happen. And there's the scene in the hotel where, he's been out partying and kind of keeping things as they are, and then they call him and they say, hey, the Australia show, we're canceling that.
Yeah.
And he says when Caroline comes back in, he's like, I've got to get back to work. So he almost has that like flip switch moment of, I'm about to destroy
Well, it's really
myself.
like a dark night of the soul. Like, I'm going to lose, because it's the night before that final interview. And he's like, I'm bankrupting myself. I've lost Australia and New York.
Yeah.
London's probably going to go too. I'm going to have nothing if this doesn't work.
Yeah. Also, I know I'm kind of all over the place, but I'm thinking back, we were talking about things that remind me of certain scenes whenever they're back to, after they're doing like their post-interview, they're going over their debrief, And Reston's like, what are we doing tomorrow? And they say foreign policy, and he's like, oh, great.
Yeah, Nixon's strong suit. You're in his wheelhouse now.
Yeah. What became of Reston after these interviews? Because that's another thing that kind of runs through the play is he and Zelnick are kind of thinking they've got these two British guys who come over, and they even talk about they have no clue what they're doing. They don't know what's going on. We're trying to tell them how to go about this, and Reston and Zelnick are both like, we've put our professional careers on the line, and these guys have no clue what they're doing. But I guess it worked out after all.
He continued to be a journalist. Yeah. I think maybe between sessions, Nixon went over to, was Resnick? Was that his name?
Was it Zelnick? Is that correct?
Zelnick and Reston.
Yeah.
Reston.
Yeah, Reston.
And he said, how's your father doing?
Oh, yeah.
So,
right.
I mean, he was aware of them and their hatred, but this is a guy who negotiated with communists. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be afraid of media people.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to cut their throat.
And then he also the character who's like, oh, when he comes over, I'm not going to shake his hand. I'm going to. And then he turns around and there's Nixon, and it's like he shook his hand. Of course you do.
Well, that reminded me too because I didn't vote for this president, but I've told other people because when Obama was in office, I would have friends be like, oh, if Obama was here, I wouldn't shake his hand. And I was like, yes, you would. Yeah, you would. Just the same thing. If Donald Trump walked in the door, a United States president, I will shake his hand because how many, do you know what I mean? So that reminded me of that a lot because Reston's like, oh, I'm not going to shake his hand. I'm not going to shake his hand. He's like, oh, hello, Mr. President. It's good to meet you. So I thought that was pretty funny. What are some things that journalists and young aspiring journalists can learn from the play or the interviews? So if I do decide to take this back to my students or teach it one day to journalism students, what's something that they should look to these interviews to take away? Because that's something when I had mentioned it to a couple of students, and we did these projects on the eras of journalism, and they had muckraking. And I encouraged them to look into Watergate because I was like, that's a good example of, even though it was not really in that time period, I was like, that's a good example of muckraking journalists, Woodward and Bernstein. And so she was like, oh, well, we've talked about Watergate a ton. It's kind of been the theme this year for my newspaper kids is we keep going back to the Nixon stuff. And so that's what I told her. I was like, yeah, I thought that would fit in with everything that we've talked about because they went and saw the gotcha question and they had basically a lesson over those interviews, and like I said, we've talked about that. So if we did bring this to the play or to future journalism classes, what do you think young journalists can take from the play or interview?
Well, I think it's important for a journalist to be tough but respectful. And those aren't mutually exclusive. You can do both.
Right. Yeah.
Now I think we have too much, go for the juggler journalism.
I agree. Yeah. So I feel like we're almost in like a yellow journalism sensationalist type era again, because it's trying to get clicks and I've said this before. I think a lot of them are saying things that maybe they don't believe themselves, but there's money in it for them, Yeah. And you've got some people who switch networks, and you're like, wait a minute, you were here and now you're here, and these beliefs don't align, and all, And so, I do. I think that I crave that, just a respect for journalism again, because you can rely on them not hyping up the situation.
We didn't know Walter Cronkite's politics. And we should have.
Right. Well, that's what I told him. I saw an interview. It was, I don't know if you've seen it, Ted Koppel was on Hannity.
Oh, yeah?
And Hannity asked Ted Koppel, he's like, you don't think I'm good for America, do you? And Ted Koppel's like, no, I don't. But he's so because you can see Hannity getting worked up, and he's like, oh, that's not good, Ted, that's not good. And Ted Koppel is just so calm. Yeah. He's like, well, if you'll let me finish, I'll explain my thinking. And I told him, these guys, they're not even in the same league as people like that, No. And I do crave that.
Yeah.
And you've talked about that too. Yeah.
Plenty of times. Because you bring up the need to get clicks.
Yeah.
And the sensationalism, the clickbait titles to everything. And we say more and more crazy stuff and egregious stuff just to get more views on things and, more attention to it. And then you bring up Walter Cronkite. I mean, how could you find a more neutral, or not neutral, but guaranteed voice for America?
Yeah.
If Walter Cronkite said it, then you knew that's how it
The
was
most trusted
in America.
man in America.
The most trusted man in America.
And he was a journalist.
And a journalist.
Yeah.
So we need to be able to trust our journalists.
But that's how it should be. I mean, right? Yeah.
Exactly. That's the way I was taught.
Yeah.
And that's the way I
was
continue
taught.
to do.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. I'm evidence of that. That's how I was taught, and I try to take that to my students. I mean, and we talk about that in class too. Like, of course we have political leanings, right? Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. And I try to tell my kids, like, in our journalistic class, it's kind of different than most other classes. We've got to be willing to be open about our politics because journalism and politics are so closely aligned.
They are.
And that's what I try to tell them, like, I don't agree with these things, but if I had to report on it, I would report on it as evenly as possible.
Yeah.
But that's something we've also talked about in my doctoral classes is there such thing as like true non-bias because we're human beings, you know?
We're biased, but I think we can still be fair.
Yeah,
You know,
I
by
agree with
allowing
that,
both
yeah.
sides or three sides of their three to have their say.
Yeah, I agree with that.
David Frost gets compared at one point that he seems charming enough, and somebody says that he defines the age they live in, ... like Vidal Sassoon.
Yes.
It's like, okay, so even back then, like, it's still the same kind of, like, he's not a serious taken journalist. He's a more of a celebrity figure. But for me, that kind of summed up what this meant for Frost, for Nixon, and for others. There's this movie with Kevin Kline in it. It's called The Emperor's Club. And he always makes his history students walk in and read this plaque off the wall from some ancient king. And he's bragging, I am Shutruk Nahunte, king of Anshan and Susa, and I did this. And he asks the class, so who was Shutruk Nahunte? And they're like, I don't know. But I don't know. He's bragging about all these things. Who was he? I don't know. He says that's the point, that ambition without contribution means nothing. And you can be the defining Vidal Sassoon of your age. You can be whatever. But if you didn't actually contribute to anything, history's going to forget you. You were nothing.
Yeah.
But I think that in a work like this, you see just how much Nixon did matter, even as a controversial figure, how much he did matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think if Wallace and CBS did the interviews instead of Frost, do you think the tone would have been different?
Oh,
or,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been go for the jugular, which I think might have backfired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that it kind of, you know, I know we keep going back to that, but that's what they were kind of trying to do with that opening question. And it's like you said, though, I never thought of it that way, but Nixon's been in the room with people way more important
Russians,
than David
Chinese,
Frost. Yeah. And had problems and questions that were way more difficult than why did you burn those tapes? And they were like, oh, we're going to get him. And he's just kind of like, well, let me tell you about that. So, yeah, that's interesting. If you were David Frost, how would you conduct these interviews differently?
Well, I think that he took the right tone. You know, he just went right down the middle, and I'm sure that he personally did not care for Nixon, but I don't think he mistreated him. You know, he let Nixon have his say for 10 hours.
Yeah.
So I think he handled it correctly, even though he was criticized by both sides, one for being too tough and the other one for not being tough enough. But sometimes I think that's what you got to do is, you know, split the difference.
Yeah. What about you? Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. You can do this if you want to. You don't have to. But I want us to say thank you in our best Richard Nixon impression.
I'm going to tell you right now, like, I know this is the first time we've ever met and talked. When I read this play, I found myself sitting in the corner of the house reading it, and I would whisper words out loud. And I found myself sitting there doing a Nixon voice while you were doing it. And I thought, Jason, what are you doing? You're saying this out loud in a Nixon impression. And even here today, I'm reading his quotes, and I feel like you can't help but fall into a Nixon voice when you repeat Nixon stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Like I said, you can if you want.
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. Well, we can do it. You go first.
Well, I just want to say that I am not a crook, and I want to thank you for your time here, America. I want to thank you for your honesty. I want to thank you for your self-sacrifice and for the time that you've allowed me to. Oh, wait, I'm being dragged off the stage right now. I want to thank you. Thank you.
How would you rate that?
Very good.
Okay, good. Because I'm not going to be
He's like
anywhere
a
close.
3 out of 10.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say it because Lyndon Johnson did it first, so I'm going to say it because he did it, and I just want to say thank you.
I love
How was
it.
that? Wait.
I love it.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
All right, well, Dr. Witcher, thanks, and
Thank you.
we'll have to have you on again so you can get that sport coat.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Is it going to be a green jacket like the master?
It can be any color. It can be any color you want it to be. It'd probably be like a poop color because of the quality of this podcast, but well, thank you, Ian.
Thank you.
And so that's always the issue for me is like, where do you step in and say, okay, that's enough. Like, let's, or I don't know. But I'm I've learned that about myself. I'm very passive.
I almost just feel like if it's going to, well, I clearly don't know anything about journalism, but I expect that a journalistic piece produced by an academic institution or a credible journalistic piece almost has to maintain an attitude of decorum to it in order to be considered a respectable source of news. But we are surrounded by so much that belittles it. And you all are talking about yellow journalism, like getting all the clicks and likes and everything. And so it reminded me of Cicero fighting a losing battle by trying to save some institution that was dead by using methods that were pre-institutional and not going to work anymore. And so you're fighting to save something that's with methods that don't work anymore.
Yeah.
So does it merit the institution to still maintain that decorum in an age where these jackbooted thugs get to go and shoot Alex Preddy and Renee Good and not have any consequences for it?
Oh my gosh. That's not how they're playing.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. But I don't think that that's the forum for that.
I know. But I also just spent an entire election cycle where I was told by the champ that when they go low, we go high. And they won.
I don't know.
That bothers me, among many
other things.
Many things. So getting to sit with Russ Witcher talking about Frost Nixon. I had never gotten to talk to him before, but that was pretty cool getting to do that. Frost Nixon is something that I had considered us using in the classroom. So you're actually going to use it in the classroom.
I'm thinking on it. Yeah. If I have the bandwidth / space. Yeah. Yeah. That's what I was telling you. I'm not going to like move the house around to try to fit it in there, but I just noticed that there were so many like supplemental texts to go along with it. And, we're reading Man Search for Meaning right now, and I guess technically we're reading Night also. And so we read almost 2 identical scenes of the transportation from home to concentration camp. And we really had a good discussion today about Viktor Frankl as a psychologist. Elie Wiesel was just a normal guy. And let's talk about their writing styles. So we had a good talk about that with because they were saying, well, he's a lot more clinical and he's a lot more analytical and he's more unbiased and he's more storytelling and there's more like anger in his words and things like that. So it was a good conversation, but I think that you could really do that with Nixon's speeches. And honestly, I think that you could show them some Kennedy speeches because, that's who he was up against.
You're bringing Jack Kennedy into this?
Heck yeah. And because we did land on the moon. I'm in a group chat with my best friends right now, and my brother had to ask who else doesn't, which he does. I just want to preface that he does believe we landed on the moon. And I just told him, I said, guys, I don't think I can take part in this conversation. That's one of those things that's really starting to anger me.
Yeah.
Like when the kids say Helen Keller was
Yes.
real, it's really starting to anger me.
Yes.
So, but anyways.
Well, that's one of the questions I always wanted to ask with this is like, why don't we use this in the classroom? You hear about this. It used to be something that was known. So why not use it in the classroom if you ever have an opportunity? You teach a junior English class. That's American Lit. You teach a journalism class. And
we are going to read it.
and you're branching out into making them read things that relate very much to a journalistic take on writing. So I think one of the things that impedes it might be finding copies,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And I got that PDF that I found that I'm probably, if I do, try not to say do. If I do it,
No, keep
we
going.
just talked about like being credible and being appropriate, and I was like, I'm gonna say do.
The intellectual measure for this show is just skyrocketing.
If I do choose to do this text, I'm going to probably just post that onto Google Classroom this year. So
I don't know. I know some teachers get real touchy about using PDFs in a classroom.
Yeah.
But I think it's a fair use kind of approach in this classroom. It's not like we're trying to market or sell anything or steal anything. I'm just trying to provide you access of looking at something through an educational lens so we can discuss it. So if I can do that in a podcast, why can I not do that in a classroom? Finding copies of something would have been difficult, but the PDF solves that. What else do you think makes it difficult to teach it in the classroom, though? Or keeps Frost Nixon from being something we use in a junior or classroom?
I wonder if part of it is the politics, because you do have to dip into it. Because I was showing my journalism kids, I was introducing them to Watergate, and we watched the scene from the movie and from the original interviews where Nixon says, well, if the president does it, then it's legal. But also I showed them, Bob Woodward was talking about kind of the process of getting started, kind of chasing after Nixon. And he talked about a lot of like, well, Republicans thought this and Republicans thought that, and I could see people in this climate, especially with it being Republicans, because they get so touchy about that. Who's woke now?
Look at all those DEI hires. Our Homeland Security used to be a plumber.
I do think that probably pushes people away, but maybe it's so new too. The play was presented in 2007.
Yeah.
So maybe I wasn't aware that it was a play. I thought it was just a movie. So that was cool for me.
I only just knew of the interviews. And I think when I found the script and I showed it to Aubrey, she was like, oh my gosh, Haston talks about this all the time. So I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Why do you think?
Of just what makes it difficult in the classroom?
Well, yeah, like why?
The age old, okay, well, where are you going to find copies?
Yeah.
The age old, well, I already have a curriculum that I have to go with. But also people just being weird about trying new things. I don't know that the politics is such a big tangle because Nixon is so far removed from our current state of affairs. It becomes more of a historical piece instead of talking about current politics. But it does. I mean, it would inevitably come back to that. You're right. Because if you're talking about, well, this treatment of a president, it's immediately going to like bang on doors.
You said that you thought Nixon's character in the play was interesting because he was a dragon, he was a vampire, he was the champ. How would you go about? Because I thought that I was listening to that thinking, okay, well, if I taught this and stole this from Crockett, how would I present that? But I don't know. Like, would you have them pick, like, say, okay, he's either this, or this. Can you give me examples?
One of the writing exercises that I like to do in class is thinking in metaphor, where they have to pick a metaphor off the list. And then I give them some examples of how we write extended metaphors in a narrative way. If I said that my brother is a slug, Okay, so you can start with that, but really, how can you write about the brother being a slug? And you have to brainstorm, what are all the sluggy things? Like, what do slugs do? What are they like? And then when you think about that person in context, how are they slimy? How are they slow, stodgy, torpid? Like, what are these things? What is the salt that's going to shrivel them up and make them fear? So maybe they would have to do something like that for me where they think, okay, vampire. Why would Nixon be a vampire? Vampires do what? And then you have to like brainstorm all the list and then think about the context of the play or the context of Watergate and how is he thriving off of this political back and forth, something like that.
I think he's an underdog too, because I really think that they, not only did most people, but especially in the play, I think that Frost and his group underestimated him.
Yeah.
And I think David Frost, being English, probably only had that public persona of Nixon and thought, I'm going to be dealing with a clumsy idiot. And really, he was dealing with a really intelligent person.
See, I was thinking that the underdog in Frost Nixon is David Frost.
I think so too.
But the underdog, when you look at him in American politics, is Nixon, because you and Dr. Witcher were talking about him coming from humble beginnings and his brother's deaths and, being clumsy and, he wasn't a well-liked man. Like, that's your underdog right there. How do I can't be a Jack Kennedy, so how do I get elected when I have to go against Jack Kennedy?
Well, I think that first question of asking him, why did you burn the tapes, that was evidence of almost like a hubris, because Frost and his fellow compatriot, that was one thing that Ressner and Zelnick kept saying was, you guys don't understand our political system over here. Like, you don't understand, like, this question will not work. And they were like, yeah, he won't know what's going to be this. He won't know what's coming. And it was, he was just like prepared and ready to go when that happened. But also, like you told Dr. Witcher, Nixon was so ready to grab the mic and pull it his way because he knew that if he just rambled, he would control the narrative.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's genius.
Yeah. It's also a strategy that I see working in politics.
Yeah.
If they can get the microphone, if they can get the camera and just ramble.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you talk about that idea that you have for teaching it?
Well, it's in its infant stages, so this may not be like very well thought out, but
I just get really hyped when I heard you talking about it. I got really excited about it.
I just think that it would just I don't know if it's, you and I have talked about this, I don't know if it's like a gateway of becoming an old man, but it's really interesting though.
Yeah.
And I think the journalist in me and the journalism side of things for me is really fun because I'm able to, right now with those kids, I'm able to like show them what true journalism looked like, but also not have this political figure who is just so insidious or so like, I mean, he did something terrible that he should be remembered for doing, but I don't think that Nixon was a bad person, Right. But again, I may be naive to that. He may have been the worst guy on earth.
I don't think the data supports that.
Yeah, I don't know. But I think it'd be really fun to kind of track him as a political figure because like you could look at the Checkers speech and you could go back to the debate with Kennedy and you, like I said, you could review Kennedy, some of his speeches and say, okay, well, this is the president that won, and then look at some of the things Johnson did, and then you could lead into the Watergate stuff and the historical context around that. And I mean, it would be cool if you could find like the full article. That would be fun to read in class. I think for me though, a lot of like rhetoric things and like writing style and like speech style and how I present myself to the public. And I think things like you were talking about is Nixon as a character, who is he? Who is Richard Nixon? I think you and I are still talking about that. Like, who really is Richard Nixon? Because to me, he was the underdog. He made a big mistake. But he likes sports and he was just an average guy. then that's who he was. And so who is Nixon, you know? And I think that that's something you could kind of go into that is, okay, you probably have heard of Richard Nixon, but who is Richard Nixon?
Yeah.
And you could probably compare the play character to the real life character, and I don't know. And then you can watch a movie. Which the kids love it, and me too. I love watching it too.
You also had a game idea. You were going to gamify this for your journalism class.
Yeah. No, we are doing that. Yeah.
You are going to do that.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that now, or do you want to keep it under wraps for right now?
Well, we're just doing, it's called Teachergate.
Yeah.
Like Watergate.
Yes.
And
because I didn't know if like Aubrey or somebody might listen to this. And
well, Aubrey
like,
already knows because you guys are, they're working towards their exam. So I told her, I was like, you can participate, but you'll have to participate on your own. So she opted out. But I've just tried to design it with triggers where it's an investigative journalism unit, and who better to investigate than Woodward and Bernstein. But also I'm kind of wanting, the more I read about it, I almost want to see if they would be interested in researching them, Woodward and Bernstein, because there's a lot of people who feel like that they've gotten too much credit for the story. And I think that that's interesting because they're like these shining beacons of journalism.
Right.
You know, I had Russ Witcher and we talked about Woodward and Bernstein all the time in class. But yeah, just like certain triggers set up so if they're investigating and interviewing the right way and asking the right questions, then their anonymous source will help feed them more and more information. And that's what I was telling them today. We talked about interviewing, and you know, they've got a press conference coming up, and I think my students are really in a bad habit of, because we don't have any competition. I mean, we don't have any competition, you know, not in a good way. We're just this high school newspaper. So they'll wait and get like a press release and take from that, which there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I've done that. Or they'll watch a press conference, and I do that too. But when I talk to them today about like timeliness, like you can't just be like, Jason, he's at the Oracle and I'm at the Spartan Voice, and they'll publish that story, and then I'll wait till the press conference comes out, and I won't even attend. You know, I think that they're kind of in that type of mindset. And I was trying to get them today to realize, like, if you're not breaking the news, no one's going to read you. No one wants to read you, you know. And we got to, I mean, I'm probably going to name drop here, but we got to talk about the Upper Cumberland Reporter and some of our local papers, because on spring break, our girls were making a state tournament run and nobody was talking about it. They still had Ty Cobb's region championship picture. But it was like, okay, are you doing this on purpose? Because we've heard the rumors of the bias, you know, which I think there's some legitimacy to. But also, why are you not doing your job and report, you know? And so I would go and be like, okay, well then I can go to Sparta Live, because I know that my students were reporting on it, because I've got a couple writing sports there. But then they were like, well, they're not posting our articles. We're sending them in and they're not posting them. So sometimes they'll wait for the paper to come out and then post it. That's why the articles are like 2 weeks late. Okay. Well, Herald Citizen has a paywall.
Right.
Well, the Tennessean, you only get 5. So it was kind of like I would have to text Brent Ryan and say, hey, can you keep me updated? Because I can't come unless they play in the championship. Anyways, we got to talking about that, about how you can lose readership. You can lose reputation points and all that. Anyways, that was like way off in left.
No, yeah. I liked your idea for it because I like getting to do like little games like that with them in class where they're investigating. Like I tried a murder mystery one time before the start of Hamlet. Like, oh no, we've got this dead body here, and you've got different kids in the room who were like seniors that had been through Hamlet before, and they got to have costumes and props. And it's like, now the kids are going to come around and investigate you, Professor Plum, and you, King Claudius, or whatever. And so it was like triggers, like you were saying.
Yeah.
And then they get to put their investigation together and figure out who's the one that did it. So I like the idea of your premise for Teachergate, of a teacher getting a job they weren't supposed to get. And whoa, how did they get that?
Well, also I think one of the things that I think is good about this with the gamifying it, and I don't know if it is able to work like this with Hamlet, but I'm hoping that they can see the skills we're being taught in class can be applied immediately.
Yeah.
Because we talked about questioning and interviewing today and like being active listeners, and I almost showed them our Bill Landry video just because I love Bill Landry, but there were times that was a struggle to get questions out of him. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
I think that my students are really bad about, okay, question 1, did you burn the tapes? Question 2, why did you not get out of Vietnam soon enough? And then when I start my interview, okay, Mr. President, why didn't you burn your tapes? And then sit there for the whole spiel, and then, okay, question 2, not relevant, but why did you leave Vietnam? Do you know what I'm saying? So I was trying to talk to them about active listening, and then now they've got that press conference on Thursday, and we're going to talk about anonymous sources, and I'm just hoping that this way they can see that it's like active, you know, like, okay, well, we just talked about anonymous sources, and I just got an anonymous source, and AP, the Associated Press, has guidelines to this, and do I meet these guidelines? And or I'm going to get another anonymous source, so I got to go back and check my guidelines, and okay, this information checks out, and I don't know what an EDS is, and I need to research that, and so on. So I'm hoping that they'll see the legitimacy of what we're learning in class.
Well, 100%. I have kids who are doing their research project on oral histories right now, and so I make them go interview other people about whatever their topic is. It doesn't matter. And kids will do it. Like, they'll take their phone to the table and interview Mr. Wilson about football in the 1980s or something. But that's exactly how they ask the questions. Is question 1, why did you play football? And then just let him talk. Question 2, who was your football hero? And that.
Yeah.
But that's just a string of questions.
I want to show them some of our videos because I have them saved, but I've told Mary Beth either I'm the biggest joke at school or the coolest teacher at school because every movement I make is scrutinized, and I don't want to show them a video of me awkwardly going through an interview. I told her the other day I was pointing at something on the board PowerPoint, and this kid goes, "Look at him pointing," and I go, Can I not point out something to you? And like today, do you know how many? I've got a yellow shirt on. I've heard all day, "Sweet shirt," and I can't tell if it's genuine or not. So I also got, sweet loafers. I was like, okay.
Things I never hear in the classroom.
Do you really not?
I never. I mean, they call me out for all sorts of crap. They call me out for talking in third person.
Oh,
They say that I do that. They
You
say
do
that
that.
I don't think I do.
but you do that.
I mean, I
Jason Crockett does talk in third person. See, that's how it was.
I think I do it when I'm talking hypothetically.
Yeah, as an example.
But they say that I'm like Julius Caesar, and for always I am Caesar. Caesar would never do this. Caesar will never be afraid. They say that I talk like that.
Not like that, but you would be like, Jason Crockett doesn't get talked about like this or something like that.
Yeah, they call me out for my tea kettle laugh too.
Oh, you got a good laugh.
Well, listeners have heard it a billion times. The whole tea kettle whistle. My daughter will give me crap about that.
Which one did we got tickled at something on these podcasts, and we both were wheezing, and it was like.
But no, they never call me. I don't think they call me out for my shirts and stuff. I don't think I clearly don't have any kind of fashion sense whatsoever. It's a t-shirt and jeans.
The first year I taught here, I had a class that they had a like out of 10 on the board, and my fit would be rated every day.
Whoa.
Yeah. So
I have never had a class do that. So teaching Frost Nixon, I think is a great idea. I can't wait to see what you do with it.
Well, I hope I get to do it. If I get to it with my journalism kids, it'll probably just be like let's read the play and watch the movie, and then I'm hoping that the Nixon and our Teacher Gate, after we do that, I'm wanting them to elect their own David Frost and conduct our own interviews.
Love it.
But with my juniors, I'm really just hoping that, I don't know, they've really liked Man's Search for Meaning. And I think that they have read so much fiction that reading nonfiction to them is kind of an oddity. And I think we do live in an age that is like Fahrenheit, where some people say, well, why would you read something made up? And I think that, so with some of that authenticity that's in these nonfiction stories, I think is really kind of grabbed them by the collar a bit. And so I'm hoping that if I do Frost Nixon with them, that it will be something, again, that's real and relevant, because it's an American experience. That's an American experience. And you and I and Dr. Witcher talked about how, are we really living that far off from that Vietnam 60s, 70s experience? Because I think that we're repeating it again, to be honest with you. Because, I mean, I didn't know that Nixon bombed Cambodia kind of secretly. And it just, when I read that, we had just bombed Iran kind of out of nowhere. And it was, it was just like, we're going through the same stuff again.
Yeah. It also walks that, I don't want to say fine line, but it walks a great line between fiction and nonfiction. Because yes, it is a fictionalized play. I get it. But it's fictionalized real history. The real Nixon, the real Frost Nixon interviews, the real circumstances.
And also, too, something to supplement with it, the transcripts to the interviews are in the Library of Congress. So they're on the public domain.
That's cool. So
you can access those. But also today I noticed when we showed the original interview and then we showed the Frost Nixon clip, that they said the exact same stuff. Now they were way more dramatized, but they said the exact same things. And so I think that that's cool to be like, okay, like you were going to read actual moments from the interviews. So,
and for anybody who's teaching perspective, that's another cool thing to do with it too, is to look at how this one was done on camera in the actual 1970s. But then from another person's perspective, it kind of would have looked or sounded like this. And like you always get to pull out details. Well, I heard him say this. Well, I heard it this way. Well, that's the difference between different takes of something.
Well, that was kind of something we talked about too today, is like the Hollywood version of this interview and the actual interview, because I was telling them that David Frost was not expecting Nixon to say that, to say, I can do whatever I want to do if I'm the president. And he just, not so cool, just goes, by pure definition. Like he's like, you mean like by pure definition, you're above the law? And it doesn't skip a beat, just sits there, doesn't change his face. Right. But in the movie, he's like, what? I'm sorry, And Nixon is so defiant, which in the interviews, he's just kind of like chilling. He's got his hands on his chin. He's like, I mean, if I'm the president, I can do whatever I want to do. So I think that's kind of a cool thing to look at, is like, why is this so dramatized, and does that add value to us and things like that.
Yeah. Do you have a play that you want us to discuss sometime soon before the end of the school year?
The piano lesson.
The piano lesson?
Because we both.
Man, I am so up for talking about more August Wilson. I always kept saying, that the first one I'd read was Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and then I had read Fences. But the more I've gotten into August Wilson, I feel like August Wilson's like one of my favorites.
Yeah.
He's like one of my flavors of writer. I really like this guy.
Yeah. I want to talk about Amadeus too.
Amadeus.
Because I finished it. And I felt, I like Mozart. We listened to him a lot at home. So it was kind of funny to go back but that's kind of like the opposite of Frost Nixon, because it's like the rumors, very, very, very small rumors that Salieri had poisoned him. And they make Mozart seemed like such a pauper, and I was reading back through, and that just wasn't the case. Right. So it's like Frost Nixon is very close to history, and Amadeus is Peter Schaefer.
But no horses this time, right? No horses.
No, but you could tell the same guy wrote it. When he talks like, what does he call? Wolfie Poofy. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Wolfie Poofy. Meowie Powie. Pussy Wussy. That's what he says. I did that to Mary Beth to see her reaction. I go out in bed and I go, come here, Pussy Wussy. She goes, what? I go, you're supposed to call me Meowie Powie. And then he goes, poo poo pee pee. And I was like, Peter Schaefer, check. But how would your guy from AP training say Amadeus?
Right? Amadeus.
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 Amadeus. Amadeus.
Okay. When we record that, I'm going to call it that the whole time. I read Amadeus.
Second Stage is a Free Zone radio production, recorded in Sparta, Tennessee. If you enjoyed the show, please give it a like, share it, subscribe for more. Word of mouth is the best advertising. And if you want to hear more, look up our other podcast with honors, now in its newest season, and our brother podcasts, A Deadman's Books and Haston Curation. You can find them on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you consume great podcasts.
Hey everyone, my name is Drew, and I want to talk to you about my show, A Deadman's Books. The show was created with the mindset of whenever I pass away, as morbidly as that sounds, that my children would inherit my books, and of all the things that I'm going to pass down to them, I think that that's the one thing that I want them to make sure that they keep and go through on their own time, but I want to be there next to them whenever they read these things. And so I created a podcast so that they could go back and listen to me and my friends and other people as we read through these books and what we had to think about it. But it's grown to so much more. We've got authors we interview. We talk about everyday life. We talk about how literature connects to life. All of those things in one place. And now we want you to come along with us and join us. This is a podcast not just for my kids, but for everyone who loves to read, everyone who loves a good story, everyone who's a parent, everyone who's a teacher, everyone who just enjoys literature. This is a place to come. So come join us every Monday on A Deadman's Books. Hey everyone, my name is Drew, and I want to talk to you about my show, A Deadman's Books. The show was created with the mindset of whenever I pass away, as morbidly as that sounds, that my children would inherit my books, and of all the things that I'm going to pass down to them, I think that that's the one thing that I want them to make sure that they keep and go through on their own time, but I want to be there next to them whenever they read these things. And so I created a podcast so that they could go back and listen to me and my friends and other people as we read through these books and what we had to think about it. But it's grown to so much more. We've got authors we interview. We talk about everyday life. We talk about how literature connects to life. All of those things in one place. And now we want you to come along with us and join us. This is a podcast not just for my kids, but for everyone who loves to read, everyone who loves a good story, everyone who's a parent, everyone who's a teacher, everyone who just enjoys literature. This is a place to come. So come join us every Monday on A Deadman's Books.